By sunrise, something was wrong inside the West Wing. Lights flickered. A hallway camera rebooted twice. And a door, the one with the reinforced frame, sat open when it had no reason to be. Security logs showed nothing. No passcode. No override. Just a gap in the feed, 8 seconds long. 8 seconds that were never supposed to exist. Inside that room, a folder lay on the table. Black cover. Silver clasp. Stamped with one word. Orion. And President Dalton Creed, jet-lagged from a midnight briefing, still wearing last night's suit, stared at it as if someone had left behind a ticking device. You know this feeling. When the world feels normal on the surface. But something under it has shifted. A guard cleared his throat. "Sir, we don't know who opened it." Creed didn't answer. He just touched the edge of the folder like it was hotter than it looked. And that's when the phone on the wall buzzed twice. A coded ring. The kind that only came when the stakes were higher than the room could hold. The voice on the other end spoke quietly. "Mr. President, the delegation from Narim is arriving ahead of schedule. 1 hour early." Creed closed his eyes. Of all mornings. Of all moments. It had to be this one. But the real story hadn't even started. He walked briskly toward the Oval Office, passing staff who pretended not to see the tension in his face. Dalton Creed was many things, bold, unpredictable, electric, but he was never silent. This morning, he was. He kept glancing at the folder tucked under his arm. Like it had teeth. Like it might bite if he let go. Something in him was shifting. He just didn't know what was coming. An aide jogged beside him. "Sir, the press is already setting up in the East Room. They want to know if today's vote is still happening." Today's vote. The one no one was supposed to mention. The classification review. The opening of the Orion files. A sealed archive detailing a decade of exploitation networks, offshore money, and elite misconduct, none of it tied to any real names, but dangerous enough to burn alliances across continents. The kind of file that could destabilize trust at a global level. The kind of file that powerful people would prefer to stay buried. And today, Congress was deciding whether to unseal it. At the exact moment the Kingdom of Narim was stepping inside the White House. Two events that were never meant to collide. But someone had forced them onto the same track. Someone wanted chaos. Creed inhaled slowly. "Keep the press away from the vote. And don't mention the files." "Yes, sir." He knew that wouldn't stop anything. Not today. Inside the Oval Office, the air felt heavier. The blinds were half open. Dust floated in the sunlight like falling ash. And on Creed's desk lay a single page torn from a classified briefing. He recognized the handwriting. "We are not prepared for what's inside." Creed's jaw tightened. There was one detail everyone missed. The vote wasn't the problem. The reaction to the vote was. As he placed the Orion folder on the desk, he noticed something else. A small metal device taped under the drawer. Not a bug. Not a tracker. A silent alarm. Triggered from outside. His pulse quickened. This wasn't a breach. It was a signal. But from who? And why today? Footsteps approached. 3 knocks. Creed straightened up. "Come in." The door opened to a tall man in a charcoal suit, Elias Rowan, National Security Advisor. His expression was carved from stone. "Mr. President, we have a situation." Creed almost laughed. "Just one." Rowan didn't smile. He slid a tablet onto the desk. On screen, satellite footage. The Narim delegation's convoy approaching D.C. But that wasn't the part that made Creed's stomach drop. The convoy was being followed. Same model cars. Same color. Different plates. Unmarked. Unregistered. Trailing them by exactly 600 feet. Perfect tracking distance. Rowan pointed at the second convoy. We don't know who they are, sir. Creed stared hard. Everything about today was wrong. Screens lit up. Voices sharpened. No one agreed on what was real anymore. Why wasn't this reported sooner? Creed asked. Rowan hesitated. Then whispered. Because the agency that flagged it doesn't exist on paper. Creed froze. A beat. 2 beats. Then Rowan leaned closer. They knew about the vote, sir. Whoever they are, they knew. A chill ran through the room. This wasn't about politics. It was about power, the kind you never see until you cross it. Creed opened the Orion folder. Inside were photos. Numbers. Diagrams. Patterns that didn't add up. Networks that shouldn't exist. And a final annotation. If the public sees this, everything changes. A breath escaped him. Not fear. Recognition. Someone had forced his hand. Someone wanted him boxed into a choice he couldn't escape. Let the files be unsealed, and risk detonating alliances. Or bury them, and confirm the quiet lie that truth was optional. You've asked this question too. What do you do when every choice breaks something? The phone buzzed again. This time, a red line signal. Only 3 people could call on it. Creed answered. Go. Mr. President, a voice said, tense and clipped. The delegation from Narim is entering the security gate. He exhaled. Understood. But before he hung up, the voice added. Sir, there's something else. Creed closed his eyes. Of course there is. There's chatter that the vote will erupt before they arrive. Some members are planning to force a live broadcast. A forced reveal. A public ambush. In front of foreign allies. Creed felt the walls tightening. Expectation, disruption, contradiction, moral pressure. Shut it down, he said. We can't, sir. Why not? Because the person pushing it is someone from your inner circle. Silence. Heavy. Dense. Unforgiving. Creed's voice dropped. Who? The aide swallowed. We don't know yet. Creed stood there, still as stone. Someone close. Someone trusted. Someone with access. The crack wasn't external. It was inside. The truth didn't break them. Their denial did. When Creed stepped into the hallway, alarms went off somewhere deep in the building. 2 agents sprinted past. Another held a radio to his ear. Someone whispered. A door clicked shut. The vote had started early. Without authorization. Without protocol. Without warning. Creed looked toward the East Wing, where cameras were powering on. He wasn't supposed to see this. And neither were the American people. But today, nothing was happening the way it was supposed to. He started walking. Fast. Determined. No hesitation. Because whatever was waiting on the other side of those cameras was only the beginning. The door to the Situation corridor slammed behind him. Dalton Creed moved fast, not the swaggering walk the cameras loved, not the confident stride he used on debate stages, but the clipped, silent pace of a man trying to outrun a decision he never wanted to make. And deep down, he knew something simple, something painfully human. This wasn't the first time he'd felt a crack forming under his feet. You know this feeling. As he pushed through the secured hallway, his hand brushed a framed photo on the wall. A black and white shot. A diner booth. A young man staring out a window, lost in a midnight America no one ever sees. It was him. Years before the suit. Years before the title. Years before the weight of a country settled onto his shoulders like an iron crown. Dalton Creed, age 22. Sitting at a greasy formica table in a Kansas highway diner at 2:17 a.m., nursing a coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. A drifter. A thinker. A man looking for a reason to keep going. And somehow, that lost kid had become the one person standing between the Orion files and the world. Creed stopped for half a second, just enough for a memory to hit him like a forgotten punch. The hum of that diner. The flickering neon "open" sign. The waitress who treated him like a person when he felt like nothing. The radio playing old Conway Twitty songs. And the sentence he'd written on a napkin that night. If power ever finds me, I hope I'm ready. He wasn't. Not today. Rowan caught up behind him. Sir, we need you upstairs. The house chamber is heating up. Creed didn't turn. His voice was low, almost reflective. Do you remember where you were at 22, Elias? Rowan blinked. This isn't the time. Just answer. Rowan sighed. I was on a factory floor in Ohio. Third shift. Welding line. Were you scared? Every day. Creed nodded once. Good. Then you know what this feels like. Because beneath the security clearances, the jargon, the titles, the polished briefings, they were still men shaped by small American places. Diners. Highways. Factory floors. Late-night TV humming in the background. Anchors of where they came from. Foreshadowing of where they might fall back to. They reached the elevator. Creed pressed the button. It didn't light up. He pressed it again. Nothing. Rowan's jaw clenched. They've locked internal movement. Who? We don't know. A beat of silence. Then Creed whispered. Someone inside this building wants the vote to explode. He felt it in his chest, a familiar tug, like the first time he'd crashed his father's truck at 16. That mix of adrenaline and denial. He just didn't know what was coming. They diverted toward a side staircase. 2 floors up, voices echoed. Arguing. Rapid fire. Heated. They weren't supposed to hear this. Creed slowed his pace, catching fragments as they climbed. Cannot delay it. If it goes public now. The president isn't prepared. This was the plan. Someone leaked the timeline. Creed froze mid-step. Someone leaked it. Not by accident. Not through incompetence. A deliberate move. A strategy. A strike. There was one detail everyone missed. The Orion Files vote was never the target. He was. They reached the landing outside the small press anteroom. The door was cracked open. Inside, staffers, press aides, digital comms analysts, everyone talking at once, trying to contain something spiraling out of control. On a TV mounted to the wall, a news cheeren flashed. Breaking, House vote on Orion Files begins early, chaos inside chamber. Creed's stomach tightened. He stepped inside. Half the room gasped. Phones dropped. Laptops snapped shut. Aides scrambled to stand. No one expected him to walk in like this, unannounced, unfiltered, unguarded. He scanned the faces. They all looked guilty. He didn't know why. Not yet. You, Creed said, pointing to a young staffer near the back. She froze. Run that feed. She fumbled with the remote and pushed the volume higher. The chamber floor was on fire. Not literally, worse. Emotionally. Politically. Morally. Members shouting. Camera lights flaring. Reporters surging against the gallery rails. The kind of moment that fractures trust. Expectation, disruption, contradiction, moral pressure. And there, center frame. Representative Martin Grayson. Creed's closest ally. His consigliere. The man who had stood with him through everything. Grayson slammed a stack of documents onto a podium and shouted into the microphone. The American people have a right to see the truth today, not tomorrow, today. The room roared. Creed's breath left his lungs. Grayson wasn't supposed to be there. Not leading this. Not fueling it. He felt the ground shift beneath him. Someone from his inner circle. It was Grayson. The betrayal was not subtle. It was cinematic. And it was personal. You've seen this before. The moment when trust collapses in real time. When the people closest to you reveal a second face. When a story suddenly rewrites itself without your permission. Creed stared at the screen, unmoving. Rowan whispered. "Sir, this is a play against you." "No," Creed said quietly. "This is a message." A camera on the house floor zoomed in. A protest sign from the gallery came into view. A sign no one expected. A simple white poster with one handwritten phrase. He knew. Creed's pulse hammered. Rowan swallowed hard. "Sir, we need to move." But Creed wasn't listening. He was remembering a night from years ago, long before politics, when he'd been 19, standing in a snowy parking lot outside a bar, watching two men shove a third into a van. He'd wanted to call the police. He didn't. Fear. Silence. Self-preservation. And he'd carried that guilt like a scar no one could see. A scar he never admitted. A scar the world didn't know. Except someone did. Someone connected that night. To the Orion files. Someone was using it. To pin him in a corner. He felt the blood drain from his face. "You okay, sir?" Rowan asked. Creed didn't answer. Because for the first time in years. He wasn't sure. The TV feed jolted again. Reporters rushed the front. Members pushed back. Security stepped in. And above the noise. Above the chaos. Grayson shouted. "If the president won't open the Orion files, we will." The chamber erupted. Creed closed his eyes. Not because he was afraid. Because he finally understood. This wasn't about truth. This was about timing. Someone had orchestrated today. Someone had aligned the vote with the foreign visit. Someone had opened that reinforced door hours earlier. And someone had dragged his past, the one night he tried to forget, into the center of national consequence. This wasn't coincidence. This was design. And the real danger wasn't change. It was who controlled the definition of normal. Creed exhaled. Long. Slow. Painful. Then he opened his eyes. "Elias," he said, "steady now. Get me to the front." "Sir, the building isn't secure." "I don't care." "But." Creed stepped forward, jaw set. "We're done reacting. From this moment on, we take control." Rowan stared at him, startled. The lost kid in the diner was gone. What stood there now was something sharper. Harder. Awakened. A man who wasn't running from his past anymore. A man who'd stopped waiting for permission. He turned toward the East Wing. And began walking. Toward the clash. Toward the cameras. Toward the vote. Toward the moment that would define everything. Dalton Creed hit the East Wing hallway like a force tearing through a fault line. Agents moved with him, not leading, not blocking, just trying to keep up. He wasn't walking anymore. He was advancing. You know this feeling. When something inside you snaps into place, and suddenly hesitation becomes fuel. Halfway down the corridor, a communications officer sprinted toward him, breathless. "Mr. President, The house feed is destabilizing. Camera angles keep switching, audio is cutting. Someone's controlling it, Creed said, without slowing. That's what we're afraid of. He stopped. Just for a moment. Then turned sharply. Who has access to override congressional broadcast? The comms officer looked pale. Only 2 agencies, sir. Which 2? She swallowed hard. Neither of which should be inside this building. They pushed forward again. The tension wasn't rising. It was stacking, layer by layer, until the atmosphere felt ready to snap. Rowan's phone buzzed. He checked the screen, and his face froze. What? Creed demanded. Rowan stared at the message as if it were a threat made of pixels. Sir, the alternate convoy we tracked earlier. Tail cars behind the Narim delegation, yes. Rowan shook his head. They're no longer behind. Creed's steps halted. Rowan continued, voice tightening. They've moved ahead. They're leading the route now. A beat. Then another. What do you mean ahead? They overtook the official diplomatic escort 4 minutes ago. That's impossible. I know. No foreign convoy allows. They weren't stopped, sir. Creed's pulse spiked. Pattern break. At first, the reports looked normal. Then a single detail fractured everything. Rowan handed him the phone. Live traffic cam feed. There it was. 4 unmarked black SUVs. No diplomatic plates. No identification. Escorting the visiting Kingdom of Narim's motorcade as if they were the official U.S. reception detail. Creed's jaw locked. How did they get clearance? They didn't. Someone was rewriting the rules. In real time. As they closed in on the cross hall, the sound hit them first. Shouting. Papers slamming. Phones ringing. Agents radioing in coded bursts. Then another sound, sharper, darker. A low, collective murmur. Like a crowd watching something they don't understand. Creed turned the corner. And the entire East Wing press unit went silent. Hundreds of eyes snapped toward him. Phones raised. Recorders armed. Lenses zoomed. He wasn't supposed to be here yet. Not until after the delegation arrived. Not until the speechwriters could sculpt the moment. Not until the choreography was safe. But today wasn't scripted. It was mutiny. Creed stepped forward. A reporter shouted. Mr. President. Is it true your closest ally is demanding the immediate release of the Orion files? Another. Did you authorize the early vote? A third. Sir, did you have prior knowledge of the contents of the files? The last question hit hard. He felt it, a punch to the gut he didn't show. Rowan leaned in. Sir, we can pull you out. No. Creed, this is too exposed. We don't run. His voice cut the air like a blade. And the room fell quiet. A young correspondent, maybe late 20s, stepped forward. Her voice wasn't accusatory. It was curious. Sharp. Honest. Mr. President, why weren't you told the vote was moved? He met her eyes. She wasn't asking as a journalist. She was asking as an American. Creed answered plainly. Because someone thought chaos would give them leverage. The room murmured. Another reporter jumped in. What kind of leverage? The kind you get, Creed said, when you weaponize confusion. This wasn't anger. This was clarity. Cold. Measured. Surgical. The kind that makes people lean in. Suddenly, all at once, the screens along the hall flashed. Static. A crack. A glitch. And then. The House chamber feed returned. Only something was wrong. The camera angle had changed. Not the overhead view. Not the gallery shot. Not the podium angle. This was a new one. A feed from an unknown camera, tight and close, pointed directly at Grayson. At his face. His hands. His trembling grip on the documents. Rowan whispered. "That's not a congressional camera." Creed felt the hairs on his arms rise. The tension sharpened. The moment shifted. And the rulebook snapped in half. Because someone, somewhere, wanted Grayson framed in the harshest possible light. Someone wanted him exposed. Someone wanted Creed to see this angle. Grayson slammed his fist on the podium. "This file cannot be buried any longer." Members surged forward, shouting. Others tried to restrain him. Security stepped in. The camera zoomed tighter. Too tight. Unnaturally so. A manufactured shot. A trap. Creed whispered. "This isn't Grayson's rebellion. It's someone else's stage." More shouting erupted in the hallway. Agents sprinted toward the entrance. One barked into a radio. "VIP arrival compromised, repeat, arrival compromised." Creed spun toward Rowan. "What now?" Rowan's face drained of color. "Sir, you need to brace yourself." "For what?" Rowan didn't answer. Instead, he pointed. Down the hall. Toward the north entrance. And that's when Creed saw them. Foreign security. Narim Royal Guards. Inside the West Wing. 10 minutes early. Unescorted. No warning. No protocol. They weren't supposed to cross that threshold. Not without State Department handlers. Not without Secret Service sweep. Not without a controlled perimeter. Everything about this broke the rules. All at once. And one of the guards carried a sealed metal case. The kind usually delivered only in private meetings. In controlled rooms. In diplomatic secrecy. Creed's breath caught. "What's in the case?" he asked. Rowan's answer came like a hammer. "We think it's connected to the files." The guard extended the case toward him. Creed's heartbeat thundered. The symbolic collision. The vote. The betrayal. The broken protocol. The alternate convoy. The early arrival. It all converged into one impossible moment. The guard spoke, heavily accented. "Mr. President. Our king requests that you open this. Before the vote concludes." Creed stared at the case. At the delegation. At the screen's flashing chaos. At the image of his closest ally being torn apart in the chamber. This wasn't pressure anymore. This was a squeeze. A coordinated, calculated, perfectly timed choke point. Expectation, disruption, contradiction, moral pressure. And then the philosophical burn. The real danger wasn't change. It was who controlled the definition of normal. Creed slowly reached for the case. But before his hand touched the metal, an agent shouted. "Mr. President, don't." The hallway erupted. The cameras surged. The guards tensed. The press gasped. And then. The lights went out. All of them. Dark. Silent. Absolute. A breathless second passed. Then another. Someone whispered in the dark. "Sir, something's wrong with the power grid." But Creed already knew. This wasn't a glitch. This was an attack. On perception. On timing. On truth. On him. And the people who orchestrated it were inside the building. The cracks were spreading. Quietly. The darkness didn't last long. Emergency lights flickered on, casting sharp, unnatural shadows across the East Wing hallway. Dalton Creed's hand hovered over the metal case. The glow from the screens painted his face in cold blue. He could see every agent, every reporter, every guard, all frozen, all aware that the rules no longer applied. You felt it once, didn't you? The sudden clarity in chaos. The moment when you realize that nothing is accidental. Rowan stepped closer, voice low, measured. Sir, there's something you need to see. Something almost no one saw. Creed's eyes narrowed. Show me. Rowan gestured to a tablet. On it, layers of data, previously hidden. Financial transactions. Travel logs. Communication chains. Patterns that didn't exist on any official record. Creed's stomach tightened. What is this? They call it the Orion Network, Rowan said. The hidden system running under everything you think is controlled. Every vote, every delegation, every diplomatic exchange, it's mapped here. Monitored here. Even predicted here. Creed leaned in, recognizing something he didn't want to know: the whole building, the vote, even his allies' rebellion, had been choreographed. By whom? He didn't yet know. A cognitive loop clicked in his mind. What they called freedom was quiet dependency. What they called control was curated chaos. The tablet revealed a sequence. Grayson's move in the chamber. The alternate convoy overtaking the Narim delegation. The early arrival of the royal guards. Every chaotic element was pre-planned, orchestrated with a precision that made the vote look accidental. Creed's pulse raced. You're saying this was all designed? Rowan nodded. Sir, it wasn't just designed. It was tested. Weeks ago. Multiple simulations. They knew exactly how the building, the cameras, even you would react. Creed's hand trembled as he touched the metal case. Inside, a smaller folder rested. Marked, Top Secret, Orion Files Summary. The paradox hit him first. This isn't about me, it's about perception. The files aren't the leverage, Rowan added. They're the bait. A quiet truth whispered itself in the room. Someone had weaponized anticipation itself. Creed opened the folder. Photographs of meetings he didn't remember attending. Emails he never sent. Even some of his own speeches, annotated with predicted reactions of Congress and foreign delegations. And here's the part almost no one saw, Rowan said, leaning over his shoulder. The final page, a single sentence in bold. Control the narrative. Control the response. Control the man. Creed stared. Everything was connected. Every piece of chaos. Every calculated move. Every betrayal, every surprise, every shock, meticulously aligned. You mean, someone has been moving pieces while we thought we were free? He whispered. Yes, Rowan replied. And the files were never the target. You were. A shift happened inside Creed. The weight of understanding settled like a storm inside his chest. All the earlier adrenaline, the rage, the panic, it now had form. The system was smarter than anyone had imagined. Pattern break. At first, the chaos looked random. Then the structure revealed itself. Creed's mind raced. He thought of the diner booth years ago, the midnight highway, the factory floor in Ohio. Every lesson, every scar, every mistake had led to this moment. It wasn't fear anymore. It was insight. Suddenly, the tablet pinged again. New data streaming in real time. They were watching now. Not just the files. Not just the vote. Not just the West Wing. Them. Every step. Every breath. Every decision. Creed swallowed. The emotional precision was sharp. If the narrative is controlled, then the truth becomes optional. A flicker of movement at the end of the hallway caught his eye. A shadow. Small. Almost human. You see that? Rowan asked. Creed didn't answer. He just stared. Someone was observing the observers. And that someone wasn't affiliated with any known agency. The storm wasn't outside the building anymore. It was inside. Inside the very walls. Inside every system that was supposed to protect him. Creed closed the folder slowly. His voice, quiet but iron strong. So everything we've been reacting to, was designed to force my hand. Rowan nodded, almost impressed. Exactly. And they almost got it. Creed's eyes scanned the room. Almost. Their system assumes predictability, Rowan explained. But human instinct, human improvisation, is not predictable. Creed smiled faintly, bitter and knowing. For the first time, the weight shifted slightly. The realization was sharp, the chaos could be used. Not to control him. But to expose them. The philosophical sting hit. And here's the part almost no one saw, the real power isn't in manipulation. It's in the decision to respond. Outside, the West Wing continued to hum with confusion. Voices rose. Cameras rolled. The delegation from Narim moved cautiously through the hallways. The vote inside the House chamber raged. But inside the East Wing, Dalton Creed had found clarity. The storm wasn't external. The storm was the system itself, the network of hidden rules, designed chaos, and covert observation. And now, Creed could see it all. The paradox was clear. What seemed like randomness was deliberate. What seemed like betrayal, was the design. What seemed like panic, was the blueprint. For the first time, he understood the scope. Not just of the files. Not just of the vote. But of the entire structure hiding behind every decision, every expectation, every human reaction. And he also understood something more personal. The system could watch. It could predict. It could manipulate. But it could not control his choice. Creed turned to Rowan, calm now. Get me to the chamber. Quietly. We're not reacting anymore. Rowan hesitated. The storm, it's everywhere. Creed's eyes, cold and sharp, held him in place. Let it come. A whisper line, soft but ominous. And maybe, this is where everything begins again. Dalton Creed stepped into the House chamber. Chaos didn't just greet him. It swallowed him. Voices screamed. Cameras glared. Paper rustled like a forest in a storm. Every eye turned toward him. Some shocked. Some accusing. Some calculating. And for a moment, he felt the weight of every misstep in his life, every scar, every lesson, every compromise, converge in a single heartbeat. You felt this once, haven't you? The room closing in, even though it's the size of the world. Grayson stood at the podium, holding the Orion Files folder like it was a weapon. Sweat glistened on his forehead. The chamber's acoustics exaggerated the pounding of his pulse. You, he shouted, knew what this would do, didn't you? Creed's eyes met his. The man before him wasn't a traitor, not exactly. He was a reflection. A mirror showing what Creed might have become if he had allowed fear and ambition to dictate every choice. At that moment, Dalton felt it, the identity crisis lurking beneath his own skin. The question every leader fears. Who am I if the system I trusted is the system that betrays me? The lights flickered. Phones buzzed. Security radios crackled in rapid bursts. Screens in the gallery showed live tweets from reporters outside. Orion Files chaos, President Creed enters chamber. Breaking, House vote collides with Narim delegation arrival. The narrative was spinning out of control. But Creed understood it was all designed. A storm crafted by invisible hands. And here came the awakening. He realized something vital, the system was smart, ruthless, omnipresent, but it was not infallible. The human mind, the instinct to act, the courage to respond. That was the loophole. You can silence a voice. You can bury a truth. But you cannot stop a mind that finally learns to question. Short sentences. Vivid images. The chamber hung on his words. Grayson faltered, uncertainty creeping into his frame. Members of Congress glanced at one another. The reporters hesitated. Even the NARIM delegation froze, observing the unfolding drama. Creed had become the eye of the storm. At the rear of the chamber, a technician whispered urgently into a headset. "Sir, there's a coordinated override attempting to seize the camera feeds remotely." Creed's lips pressed into a line. And then, nothing made sense. He strode past the podium, touching the live feeds. Fingers sliding along screens. Shifting angles. Redirecting lenses. He was improvising. Creating control within chaos. Every micro-movement mattered. Every choice was amplified by the chaos surrounding him. He reached Grayson. The Orion Files folder lay on the podium, trembling under the other man's grip. Creed placed a hand gently but firmly on Grayson's shoulder. "You don't get to force this," he said. "You get to present the truth. Let the system react, not dictate." Grayson blinked. The tension cracked. Some of the audience exhaled, barely audible, but it was there. Creed's eyes scanned the chamber. The NARIM delegation, poised but tense. Security staff, holding lines. The press corps, waiting for a cue. He realized the storm was not the cameras, the votes, or the files. The storm was the expectation that he would fail. And he refused. Outside, the East Wing corridors erupted. Agents fought through misaligned doors. Aides sprinted to secure networks. Screens flashed red warnings. But inside the chamber, Dalton Creed anchored the chaos. Pressure waves rippled outward. Every second stretched. Every breath became deliberate. Every movement calculated. "You've changed the trajectory, sir." Creed's jaw tightened. "You're welcome," he muttered. And then, almost imperceptibly, he smiled. A small smile. The kind that comes when someone finally steps into their own agency. The storm wasn't over. It never would be. But for the first time, Dalton Creed wasn't being crushed by it. He was standing inside it. On the chamber floor, Grayson finally lowered the Orion Files folder. Members of Congress hesitated, unsure how to respond. Cameras captured the hesitation. A cinematic moment of uncertainty frozen in time. Creed knew the pressure had revealed the cracks. Not just in the building. Not just in the votes. But in the people who thought they could manipulate everything. The lights flickered. Someone whispered. A door clicked shut. The human mind had flexed. And the system had paused. Creed exhaled slowly. The storm had peaked. The awakening was complete. He turned to Rowan. "Get me to the secure feed room. I want full control." Rowan hesitated, fear and awe in equal measure. "You realize what this means, sir?" Creed nodded. "Yes. It means that chaos is temporary. Clarity is eternal. You can try to control the narrative. You can manipulate perception. But you cannot extinguish the human capacity to awaken." Short pause. A beat. A breath. The storm raged outside. The chamber was alive with tension. The Orion Files still waited. The NARIM delegation still watched. But Dalton Creed, the man who once froze in a diner at 2:17 a.m., had finally found his center. And everything that came next would be measured, deliberate, and unstoppable. The chamber quieted. Not completely. Not permanently. But the storm had passed its apex. Dalton Creed stood alone for a moment. The Orion files lay untouched on the podium. Cameras still rolled. Reporters still held their breath. And yet, there was something heavier than silence in the room, a kind of truth that doesn't need words. He walked toward the Narim delegation. The foreign guard stiffened. The king's advisor watched him carefully, calculating, measured. Creed didn't flinch. He knew the power wasn't in the files. It wasn't in the vote. It wasn't even in the cameras or the conspiracies. It was in the choice to act, deliberately, wisely, humanly. When everything else tried to control him. You've seen this before. You've felt it once. The moment when clarity cuts through the chaos like sunlight breaking a storm cloud. Creed opened the Orion files folder. He didn't throw it down. He didn't hide it. He simply looked at it. And for the first time, he understood. Freedom isn't inherited. It's practiced. The storm outside the chamber would continue. The vote would be contested. The world would try to rewrite this morning's events. But inside him, something had shifted. The human mind, flawed, imperfect, unpredictable, had reclaimed control. He glanced at Grayson. The young man's hand still trembled. But the fire in his eyes had changed. Not rebellion. Not manipulation. Understanding. Creed nodded once. Acknowledgement without words. Trust rebuilt quietly. Short burst sentences. Chaos ends. Decisions remain. Lessons endure. Rowan approached. Sir, what now? Creed exhaled. Softly. Slowly. Measured. Now, he said, we ensure that truth is not optional. That choices are deliberate. That people remember what it means to be human in the eye of the storm. A pause. A breath. An echo in the room. And when your moment comes, what will you choose to become? Outside, sunlight broke through clouds over Washington, D.C. The East Wing corridors hummed with activity. The press corps adjusted cameras. Agents recalibrated systems. The Narim delegation continued its careful inspection. Everything looked calm. But Creed knew the calm was fragile. The storm would return. The files would demand attention again. The world would keep spinning on its axis of chaos and order. And yet, there was hope. Quiet. Human. Real. Creed walked back toward the podium. He touched the Orion files folder lightly. Not possession. Not fear. Acknowledgement. This wasn't about power. It wasn't about control. It was about choice. Responsibility. The small, human act of deciding, every day, to act with awareness. And maybe, this is where everything begins again. The cameras rolled. The world watched. The files waited. And Dalton Creed, once the lost kid in a Kansas diner, the restless young man on endless highways, the imperfect leader forged by life, now stood fully awake. Not because the storm had ended, but because he had learned to navigate it. And in that quiet, reflective moment, the real story, the human story, became visible. Not in headlines. Not in votes. Not in cameras. But in the subtle, deliberate choices of a man who finally realized that even in chaos, humanity could reclaim control. The House chamber emptied slowly. Reporters lingered, cameras still pointed, capturing the faintest ripple of tension. Dalton Creed watched as aides scrambled to secure feeds, sweep rooms, and quiet the lingering echoes of chaos. You know this feeling. That fragile moment after a storm. When everyone is waiting for the next wave. But the air is thick with possibility. Creed stepped outside into the East Wing corridor. The sunlight hit his face differently now. Sharper. Warmer. Almost accusatory. Rowan followed, still tense. "Sir, you handled that well. Better than I expected." Creed didn't smile. Not yet. Instead, he looked toward the windows. Across the street, traffic hummed along Constitution Avenue. Cars honked. Tourists took pictures. Life moved on as if nothing had happened. What he found next changed everything. A staffer rushed to him, waving a tablet. "Sir, there's something on the classified feed. We didn't notice it before." Creed took it. The video was grainy, from a hallway camera outside the chamber. It showed a figure, hooded, unidentifiable, slipping a small device under a door. "Who is that?" he asked. "No one knows. The logs don't exist." His pulse quickened. The cracks spread quietly. The revelation hit like a hammer. The system was still compromised. Someone inside, or just outside, had access to their network. And every reaction, every micro-movement, had been observed. Creed's jaw tightened. This wasn't paranoia. This was survival. He scanned the corridor. Every agent. Every aide. Every face held a story. A potential ally. Or a potential threat. Rowan whispered. "Sir, it could be anyone." Creed's eyes narrowed. "You've asked this question too. Who do you trust when the storm can reach every corner?" And that was the key. The tension wasn't just the files. Or the vote. Or the delegation. It was the invisible architecture of power. And the first rule of surviving it, awareness. Creed moved to the secure operations room. Screens blinked with live feeds, data overlays, and unverified alerts. He studied them like a chessboard. Every blink of a light. Every shadow. Every hesitation on camera, it could be a signal. Or a trap. There was one detail everyone missed. A map appeared, showing the movements of the unmarked convoy. It had disappeared from official surveillance an hour ago. Now it was reappearing, circling the block near the West Wing. Controlled. Calculated. Predictable. And that predictability was dangerous. Creed's mind raced. He remembered the diner. The factory. Late-night TV. Highways in the snow. Human patterns. American patterns. Flaws in the system that machines could not predict. The storm outside was replicable. The chaos in the vote was repeatable. The manipulation of perception was ongoing. But the human element, instinct, courage, improvisation, was the real wild card. And then, nothing made sense. The Narim delegation's briefcases had been tampered with. Not the king's. Not the advisors. A junior officer's. Small. Inconspicuous. Almost invisible. The implication was immediate. A distraction within a distraction. A signal for someone else to act. Creed recognized the precision. Pattern. System logic. And the audacity to test human reactions under extreme pressure. This wasn't about the files. This was about conditioning behavior. Manipulating instinct. Testing loyalty. Creed turned to Rowan. "We're not just responding anymore. We're observing. Waiting. Recording every reaction." Rowan nodded, unsettled but resolute. "We'll get the technical teams on it. Analyze every frame. Every signal. We'll uncover who orchestrated this." Creed's eyes drifted to the ceiling. Light filtered through, catching dust in the shafts. Visual anchor, the beauty of normalcy amidst engineered chaos. The contrast sharpened the lesson. Even in systems designed to control, life finds its cracks. Human life. Imperfect. Unscripted. He glanced at the Orion files once more. Unopened. Still threatening. Still the center of every potential explosion. He whispered, mostly to himself. This wasn't about politics. It was about people. And he knew the storm would come again. Bigger. Faster. Sharper. But now he was ready. Prepared. Awake. The files, the vote, the narration delegation, all variables in a wider system. A system that couldn't predict human intuition. And Dalton Creed was no longer just a participant. He was a force within it. Short burst sentence. The cracks existed. But now we see them. Outside, the city pulsed as usual. Cars. Tourists. The distant hum of Washington life. Unaware of the tension just past. Unaware of the human storm quietly reshaping decisions behind closed doors. Dalton Creed exhaled. Soft. Steady. Determined. The storm had peaked. The system's logic had been revealed. And for the first time, clarity existed in the eye of chaos. The system may watch. It may predict. But it cannot decide for the human who finally chooses to act. The streets outside the West Wing had erupted. News helicopters circled, sirens blared, and a crowd had gathered, drawn not by politics, but by the spectacle of controlled chaos spilling into the real world. Dalton Creed watched from a secure window. The city felt alive. Electric. Unpredictable. You felt it before. That electric tension when the world shifts, and suddenly nothing is stable. Rowan approached, holding a tablet. Sir, the external feeds are being tampered with. Our narrative is fragmenting before it even hits air. Creed didn't flinch. Let it fragment, he said. Let it test the system. Let it show us the cracks. Because he now understood, control was never in silence or compliance. Control was in observation. Adaptation. Timing. Outside, the unmarked SUVs were moving again. No plates. No identifiers. No authority. Cameras caught them weaving through the city, nearly invisible to standard tracking systems. Every sensor had predicted nothing. Every expectation had been violated. Creed leaned over the tablet. There was one variable the system hadn't accounted for: human instinct. Inside the West Wing, alarms blared. Agents scrambled to secure the building, the files, and the remaining delegations. The chamber's cameras flickered, some going offline, some looping previous feeds. A synthetic chaos designed to create panic. Creed's gaze stayed steady. The chaos outside mirrored the chaos inside. But inside him, a different storm raged: awareness, clarity, control. Observe. Analyze. Act. Sir, the feeds show a coordinated blackout in the surrounding district. Power grids fluctuating. Signals scrambled. We might lose comms entirely in 5 minutes. Creed's mind raced. The pattern revealed itself: external pressure synchronized with internal manipulation. The storm was expanding. From building to block, from block to city. And the orchestrators wanted him, and the world, to react predictably. Dalton walked to the comms hub. His fingers flew across interfaces, overriding scripts, redirecting feeds. A micro twist, one wrong move could expose classified systems to the attackers. He whispered. The system assumes fear. We'll give it precision instead. On the street, the crowd sensed a shift. The energy of unpredictability drew them closer. Cameras captured faces: astonishment, fear, curiosity. There was one detail everyone missed: the external chaos was a mirror. A reflection of the internal manipulation. The observers were being observed. Creed studied it all. Every wave of panic, every sudden silence, every camera blink. He realized the storm wasn't just about control. It was about testing. Testing the human response. Testing loyalty. Testing intuition. A voice crackled over the secure channel. "Sir, the files, they've been copied. External transmission initiated." Creed froze. At first, it looked like sabotage. Then he understood, someone inside wanted exposure. "Stop it," he said firmly. "No. Let it finish." Rowan's eyes widened. "What?" Creed gestured at the tablet. "Observation. If they want chaos, let them see the consequences. We measure, we respond. We learn. Not panic." The city grid flickered again. Traffic lights went dark. Helicopters hovered blindly. Sirens collided. And through it all, Dalton Creed stayed calm. He observed. He predicted. He adapted. The human element, instinct, improvisation, courage, remained unpredictable. The orchestrator's system could anticipate almost everything. But it couldn't predict clarity. It couldn't predict focus. It couldn't predict will. They test us. We endure. We control what we can. A figure approached the unmarked SUVs, slipping something beneath a tire. A twist no one expected. A disruption small but meaningful. The system faltered. Creed smiled faintly. Even in chaos, imperfection could be leverage. This wasn't about politics. This wasn't about votes. This was about people. And people, when awakened, could navigate storms machines could not. The blackout lifted slowly. Cameras regained signal. Traffic resumed. The city exhaled, almost unaware of the intricate test it had just endured. Dalton Creed looked at Rowan. "We've seen the system's hand. Now we decide ours." Short pause. A breath. The storm outside had passed, for now. But Dalton knew it would return. Bigger. Faster. Sharper. Yet inside him, a truth remained: the human mind, deliberate and awakened, could not be fully predicted. And maybe, this is where everything begins again. Dalton Creed returned to the secure operations room. Screens glowed with live data. Every camera, every sensor, every alert, all streaming into one intricate web. He didn't panic. He didn't react emotionally. He analyzed. You've seen this before. The calm at the center of the storm. The mind working faster than chaos itself. Rowan hovered nearby. "Sir, every external variable has been logged. We've cross-referenced the unmarked convoy, the blackout, and the files. The patterns repeat every 37 minutes. Creed nodded. "Good. Then we predict the next move." Short burst sentence. "We don't react. We anticipate." He tapped the tablet. A map unfolded, showing the city grid, the West Wing perimeter, and the convoy's last known location. Red lines pulsed where interference had occurred. Green lines indicated secure zones. And in one corner, a blinking symbol, unknown entity detected. At first, it seemed random. Then it became obvious: the system was testing response thresholds. Every micro-movement, every delay, every instinct was recorded. Creed turned to Rowan. "Prepare countermeasures. Secure communications. Deploy observation drones. And isolate the files. No one, gets access without my approval." Rowan hesitated. "Sir, the orchestrators might anticipate these moves." Creed's eyes hardened. "So let them. We're not here to surprise them. We're here to outlast them." Outside, the city stirred. The streets hummed again. The unmarked SUVs had disappeared, temporarily. Cameras captured normal traffic, oblivious pedestrians, and the distant sound of sirens. Creed allowed himself a quiet observation. The wind rustled papers in a nearby window. Someone laughed on the street. A dog barked. Small, human details in the middle of engineered chaos. And yet, he knew the storm could resume at any second. He returned to the tablet. Microhooks blinked across the map, surveillance gaps, anomaly reports, and predictive algorithms. There is always a variable they cannot control. And that variable is human decision. Creed's fingers moved quickly, deliberately. Redundant live feeds. Manual override on all security doors. Disinformation layers on external channels. Real-time threat triangulation for every moving target. We reclaim. We resist. We adapt. Rowan leaned in. Sir, the files. They've been duplicated externally. Even if we secure the originals, the copies exist. Creed paused. The weight of that truth pressed on him. But he didn't falter. He didn't panic. He focused. The files aren't the threat. They're the trigger. Our job is to control the reaction. Not the files themselves. He exhaled slowly, letting the realization settle. It wasn't about politics. It wasn't about votes. It was about foresight. A junior analyst interrupted. Sir, there's movement near the North Corridor. Multiple unidentified individuals. They're coordinating with someone inside. Creed's jaw tightened. At first, it seemed minor. Then the coordination revealed an entirely new layer. He moved toward the comms hub. Every decision had to be precise. Every command had to anticipate the next ripple. The storm wasn't ending. It was evolving. He activated secure voice channels. Agents on perimeter, remain covert. No engagement unless directly compromised. Focus on observation. Document everything. Rowan nodded. Creed's strategy was clear: contain, observe, adapt. Not reactionary. Not emotional. Strategic. Short pause. A breath. You've asked this question too, Creed said quietly. Who survives the storm? Not the strongest. Not the loudest. The one who sees the currents, and moves with them. Outside, shadows shifted. The unknown entity from earlier reappeared briefly on the live feed, slipping through the perimeter. A small movement. Almost invisible. A calculated test. Creed smiled faintly. Imperfection in chaos was leverage. A micro-twist that could be exploited. The orchestrators could predict patterns. They could manipulate perception. But they could not predict clarity. They could not anticipate human judgment. Dalton Creed exhaled. The storm was not over. The files were not contained. The system was still observing, still testing. But for the first time, he wasn't reacting. He was controlling. The human mind, deliberate and awake, had become the ultimate countermeasure. And maybe, this is where the real game begins. The room was silent. Except for the faint hum of the secure systems. Screens glowed blue and green, reflecting on Dalton Creed's sharp eyes. The storm outside had quieted. But inside, another one was gathering. You felt it once, haven't you? The sudden clarity when you realize the danger isn't where you were looking, it's somewhere else entirely. Sir, we traced the unmarked convoy to an abandoned warehouse near the waterfront. Coordinates indicate multiple entry points, and someone is monitoring our comms. Creed's jaw tightened. At first, it seemed like a simple surveillance breach. Then the data revealed the deeper truth. This was not just a threat. It was a test. A system designed to probe, to manipulate, and to anticipate human response at every turn. He leaned over the tablet. Images flashed, the convoy, hooded figures, a series of small devices being placed strategically. Each one marked a trigger point, communications, electricity, even the building's emergency protocols. Short sentences. Sensory grounding. Lights flickered. A door clicked. Someone whispered. "You see that?" Creed asked quietly. Rowan nodded, but his hands trembled. "They're precise. Methodical. Predictable, almost. There was one variable they couldn't calculate. Human improvisation." Creed activated a secure link to the intelligence hub. Agents in the field moved silently, their eyes on every shadow, every alley, every vehicle approaching the waterfront. A micro-twist emerged. One figure from the files, previously considered a peripheral player, was coordinating the entire operation. Someone inside the West Wing itself. Dalton's pulse accelerated. Betrayal had a face. And it had been hiding in plain sight. He called the agent quietly. "Report." The response was chilling. "Yes, sir, it's Grayson. He's orchestrating the second phase." Creed's eyes narrowed. The young man who had once been a mirror, now a manipulator. The files had been a lure, yes. But the real danger was the mind behind the chaos. The betrayal wasn't political. It was personal. It was intimate. Dalton turned to Rowan. "Prepare the counter-operation. We don't just respond. We anticipate. We adapt. We move. We expose." Outside, the city remained oblivious. Pedestrians crossed streets. Cars honked. Tourists snapped photos. And yet, unseen, a conspiracy unfolded, layer upon layer, waiting for a human error to tip the scale. Creed studied the images of Grayson. Every movement had been predicted. Every hesitation exploited. And yet, there was one flaw. The human flaw. Grayson had assumed fear would control Dalton. That chaos would paralyze him. But Dalton had learned. He had watched. He had adapted. Pattern break. At first, the conspiracy seemed infallible. Then, the imperfection of human choice appeared. Dalton's voice was calm but resolute. "Activate drone surveillance. Isolate communication channels. Track Grayson. And let him think we are blind." Rowan nodded, impressed by the precision. Creed's strategy was clear. Observation first. Action second. The storm outside had been a distraction. The files had been a lure. The real battle was now, inside the shadows. The hum of servers. A phone vibrating softly. A light blinking red. Creed exhaled. He understood the paradox fully. The orchestrators could predict almost everything. But they could not predict clarity. They could not predict will. They could not predict a mind fully awake. This wasn't just about a vote. It wasn't just about files. It wasn't even about the West Wing. It was about who controls perception. Who decides what is truth? Who defines what chaos is acceptable? Dalton smiled faintly, bitter and knowing. The storm was evolving. The system was testing boundaries. But he was ready. You can engineer chaos. You can manipulate perception. But you cannot extinguish the human capacity to awaken. Creed activated the secure link to the surveillance drones. The waterfront came into view on multiple screens. Hooded figures moved cautiously, unaware they were being tracked. Every micro-movement analyzed. Every route anticipated. The game is no longer theirs. It belongs to the one who sees. Outside, the sun dipped toward the horizon. Shadows grew longer. The city exhaled slowly, oblivious to the orchestration beneath. Dalton Creed watched, calm, deliberate, awake. The storm would come again. Grayson's plan would unfold. Chaos could be observed. Manipulation could be anticipated. And the human mind, fully aware, was unstoppable. And maybe, this is where the final test begins. Dalton Creed watched the waterfront on the screens. The hooded figures moved cautiously. Every step calculated. Every glance scanned. But their predictability was their flaw. You felt it before, haven't you? The shift from fear to anticipation. The moment when you realize you are the one setting the pace. Sir, the external surveillance is ready. We can isolate Grayson and the accomplices without a single civilian noticing. Creed nodded. Good. Then we do it quietly. He activated the counter-strike protocol. Drones launched silently, slipping above rooftops. Encrypted signals jammed external communications. All exits were tracked, anticipated, and monitored. Inside the West Wing, agents moved like shadows. No noise. No hesitation. Every door, every camera, every corridor under control. Dalton's voice, calm but commanding, echoed through the secure channel. Contain, observe, intercept. No engagement unless necessary. Rowan's eyes widened. You're trusting improvisation. Creed's lips tightened. Yes. Improvisation guided by awareness. That is our advantage. There is one variable the orchestrators cannot predict. And that variable is human judgment. Outside, the hooded figures reached a small dock. Boxes stacked. Devices humming quietly. The plan moving forward exactly as intended. Dalton watched, fingers poised over the tablet. Every micro-movement recorded. Every pathway anticipated. And yet, a single variable could ruin everything, human unpredictability. One slip, one hesitation, one miscalculation, and the storm would tilt in his favor. The drones positioned themselves overhead, shadows invisible to the naked eye. Encrypted feeds relayed real-time movements. Every exit point accounted for. Every escape route blocked silently. This isn't confrontation. It's orchestration. Let them think they are free. We guide them into our hands. The first hooded figure paused. A device was slightly out of alignment. He cursed softly, unaware he was being watched. Creed smiled faintly. Perfection is predictable. Imperfection is opportunity. A secondary agent inside the warehouse moved quietly, guided by drone visuals. He slipped behind crates. Prepared for interception. Sir, one of them is signaling. Possible internal accomplice ready to engage. Creed's jaw tightened. At first, it seemed like a complication. Then he realized, it was part of the test. The orchestrators were watching their own players, unaware of Dalton's observation. He exhaled slowly, letting the tension settle. The hum of drones. A faint metallic click. The soft splash of water against the dock. Dalton activated the final phase. Lights flashed briefly to disorient the intruders. Encrypted signals scrambled any unauthorized communications. The pathway for the counteragents was clear. Every move anticipated, every escape attempted blocked, almost seamlessly. Observe. Contain. Neutralize. Inside the warehouse, the hooded figures hesitated. The devices they had placed were now under surveillance. Every step mapped, every reaction observed. Their plan, carefully executed, was slowly collapsing under the precision of Dalton's strategic countermeasures. Rowan whispered. They're realizing too late, sir. Creed's eyes glimmered. Yes. The storm is theirs to feel. But the outcome, ours to command. The final micro-twist emerged. One figure attempted to trigger a secondary device. The signal was immediately isolated and neutralized. No explosion. No alert. Just silent, methodical containment. The orchestrator's system had assumed chaos. Dalton had assumed clarity. This wasn't about aggression. This wasn't about dominance. It was about understanding. Guiding human and mechanical elements to balance within the storm. Dalton stepped back, observing the aftermath. The hooded figures, trapped, immobilized, disoriented. Not defeated violently. Defeated by anticipation, clarity, and human improvisation. The storm ends where awareness begins. The city outside continued to pulse, unaware. Traffic, pedestrians, and distant sirens, normalcy returned. Dalton Creed exhaled, finally allowing a small smile. And maybe, this is where the storm truly meets the human mind. The warehouse was silent. Except for the low hum of the drones overhead. Boxes untouched. Devices rendered inert. Hooded figures restrained, their plans disassembled without a single explosion. Dalton Creed stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of oil and electricity. Order reclaimed. Chaos contained. You felt it once, haven't you? That fragile relief after a storm passes. The silence that carries both victory and forewarning. Rowan entered behind him, eyes scanning the subdued intruders. They're contained, sir. No injuries. No public exposure. Creed nodded. But his mind was elsewhere. Observing. Analyzing. Already plotting the next move. Even in victory, the ripple of consequences begins. The Orion files remained untouched in the secure van outside. Dalton approached slowly. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. The storm of human and systemic error had already revealed truths deeper than the documents themselves. The wind rustled papers left on a table. Water lapped against the dock outside. A distant train echoed softly in the night. Dalton turned to Rowan. The orchestrators will regroup. They always do. The storm isn't over. It never is. But now we know the rules. Rowan swallowed. What rules, sir? Creed's eyes narrowed, steady and intense. Predictability. Expectation. They rely on both. We exploit the absence of both. There is one detail no system can calculate, the deliberate human mind. Outside, the city slept, unaware. The waterfront quieted. Lights reflected gently on the river. Tourists and night drivers passed, oblivious to the hidden storm that had unfolded just blocks away. Dalton exhaled, letting the weight of the operation settle. We contained. We observed. We survived. He surveyed the restrained figures. No malice in his gaze. Only comprehension. Every human actor in this game had a choice. And every choice carried consequences. The files had been a test. Grayson had been a test. The orchestrators had been a test. And Dalton had passed. Not because he had defeated them. But because he had learned. And in learning, he had observed the storm without being consumed by it. Sir, the media feeds, they're stabilizing. They have no idea what's just happened. Creed allowed a faint smile. Let them think that. Reality is more precise than perception. He turned back toward the Orion Files van. The documents inside were still dangerous. Still capable of triggering chaos. But Dalton knew the real danger was not the documents themselves. It was the human reaction they provoked. Chaos is never truly gone. It waits in corners, in shadows, in expectation. The difference is how we meet it. The difference is what we choose to do when the storm tests us. Dalton Creed exhaled slowly. The night was calm, but the storm of consequences had begun to ripple outward. Every player would act. Every observer would react. And he would watch. Everything observed now becomes leverage for the future. Every hesitation recorded. Every instinct noted. Every human choice logged in memory. Sir, what now? Dalton's eyes scanned the city. Lights flickered on distant streets. The river reflected neon in ripples. The wind carried faint city sounds. He smiled faintly, quietly. The storm will return. And when it does, we won't just react. We will guide it. Because the human mind, finally awake, is unstoppable. And maybe, this is where the real reckoning begins. The city awoke slowly. Traffic hummed. Coffee shops opened. Tourists wandered through monuments, snapping photos. Life went on as if nothing had happened. You've seen this before. The calm morning after a storm. The world oblivious to the chaos that shaped it just hours before. Dalton Creed sat in the secure operations room. Screens displayed live feeds, news tickers, and social media trends. The orchestrator's test had ripple effects. Even without public exposure, the political machinery was shifting. Rowan leaned over. "Sir, the vote in Congress, it's trending toward discussion. Everyone is reacting to yesterday's anomalies, the files, the blackout, the conspiracy reports." Creed's eyes narrowed. Perception is power. And power is influence. Across the city, journalists analyzed incomplete data. Experts speculated on leaks, digital interference, and procedural anomalies. Politicians whispered behind closed doors. Every reaction triggered another wave of rumor, speculation, and subtle panic. The storm had ended, but the ripples were just beginning. Dalton reviewed a map of political influence. Red zones, green zones, and areas of uncertainty pulsed across the screen. Every decision, every hesitation, and every rumor could tilt public opinion. The system thinks we only manage events. It doesn't realize we can manage perception. A phone pinged softly. Lights flickered. The hum of servers filled the room. The files remained secured, yet their presence created a tension invisible to the public. Every journalist chasing shadows, every politician defending missteps, every social media feed reacting, all influenced without realizing it. The storm outside had been controlled, but the storm in perception was now untouchable. Dalton activated live monitoring on key politicians. Every gesture, every pause, every tweet analyzed for reaction. The orchestrators had assumed public chaos would follow the files. They had underestimated subtle influence. And then, everyone reacted differently than expected. Rumors spread. Leaders hesitated. The truth shifted. Rowan's voice was cautious. "Sir, it's already impacting committee votes. Legislation discussions are being delayed. Everyone is second-guessing." Creed's eyes gleamed. Exactly as planned. The storm had moved from the streets to the minds of those in power. Outside, life appeared normal. Tourists sipped lattes. Traffic flowed. Birds chirped. But Dalton knew better. The city, the capital, the nation, all were subtly bending to unseen forces. And the human mind, awake and deliberate, was the only compass through the fog. Control is not visible. It is exercised quietly. It is understood by few. Dalton turned to Rowan. "Prepare the briefing. No one sees the storm yet, but everyone will feel it. We guide perception as carefully as we guide action." Rowan swallowed. "Yes, sir." Creed paused, reflecting. The files were not just documents. The storm had not just been chaos. It was the awakening of insight, the ability to influence without force, to control without aggression. The real power isn't in action. It's in the mind that anticipates the storm and steers it quietly. Dalton exhaled slowly. The political ripples would continue for days, weeks, perhaps months. Leaders would react, some wisely, some ignorantly. The public would perceive, speculate, and misinterpret. But he and his team would observe. Anticipate. Guide. And maybe, the storm outside was only the beginning of what truly matters. Dalton Creed stood alone in the operations room. Screens displayed live feeds from the waterfront, the city, and internal West Wing corridors. Everything seemed calm. Almost too calm. You felt it, haven't you? The unease that follows a storm, the subtle tension that hints something deeper is lurking. Rowan's voice broke the silence. Sir, our internal audit flagged anomalies. Several personnel accessed secure channels without authorization. Creed's eyes narrowed. Short burst sentence. The storm isn't just outside. It's inside. He walked slowly, methodically, down the corridor. Each step echoed. A reminder that control is fragile when human imperfection enters the system. Screens revealed the anomalies. A junior analyst opening classified channels. A security agent looping surveillance feeds. Small actions. Almost invisible. Yet each was a potential breach. A tiny fracture in a system built for precision. There is one variable every perfect plan overlooks: human error. Dalton's mind raced. He considered motives. Fear. Greed. Confusion. Ambition. He understood each flaw intimately. At first, the errors seemed random. Then, unmistakable coordination emerged. A secondary conspiracy. Inside the walls he thought secure. Testing loyalty. Exploiting the system. Rowan asked cautiously, Sir, is this connected to Grayson? Creed paused, eyes fixed on a looping security feed. Partially. But not entirely. There's a deeper fault. A network of small compromises, hidden alliances. People acting without orders. People acting for themselves. They think they hide it. They don't. We see. The internal map glowed red in areas of concern. Lights blinked over corridors, offices, and entry points. Each red zone a potential compromise. Each one a test of Dalton's patience and judgment. The hum of servers. The faint shuffle of papers. The click of a door lock. Every small imperfection magnifies under pressure. Creed turned to Rowan. We've observed chaos outside. Now we confront chaos inside. We isolate, we assess, we act. But silently. No alarm. No panic. The human mind must not detect us, yet. Rowan swallowed, tense but understanding. Yes, sir. We'll begin internal observation immediately. Dalton considered the implications. The orchestrators had designed chaos externally. But inside, human weaknesses were magnifying it. The storm had a new layer, subtle, internal, invisible to most. It is not the storm outside that destroys us. It is the cracks within ourselves we ignore. We will observe. We will isolate. We will correct. Creed's eyes scanned the internal grid. Every agent. Every analyst. Every aide. No one escaped scrutiny. The internal fault lines were small, almost invisible. Yet, if left unchecked, they could unravel everything. Sir, it's unsettling. So many moving parts. Creed smiled faintly. Yes. And that's why we remain calm. Precision in observation. Deliberate response. Awareness in chaos. Emotional echo. It wasn't fear that guided them. It was understanding. It wasn't control that mattered. It was insight. Dalton exhaled slowly. The internal fault lines were exposed. The orchestrator's influence, external and internal, was beginning to converge. And now, he was ready. Because the storm isn't just around us. It's within. And we are awake. Night had fallen over the city. Lights reflected off glass skyscrapers, painting the streets in fragments of color. Traffic flowed. Life seemed normal. But Dalton Creed knew better. You felt it once, haven't you? The quiet before revelation. The awareness that the calm world hides unseen currents beneath. Rowan leaned over the tablet, eyes wide. Sir, we've traced encrypted communications. Multiple unauthorized channels converging. The network isn't just external. It's internal. And coordinated. Dalton's jaw tightened. Short burst sentence. Then the storm has allies we didn't see. Screens displayed overlapping grids, offices, city blocks, and peripheral observation points. Red lines pulsed where convergence occurred. Signals bounced from rooftops to vehicles to internal systems. The orchestrator's plan was no longer a single thread. It had multiplied. Fractured. Connected in shadows. There was one detail everyone missed: shadow alliances don't reveal themselves. They reveal patterns. And Dalton could read them. Dalton turned to Rowan. These aren't just intruders. They're collaborators. Some external. Some internal. All unseen. All deliberate. Rowan swallowed. Sir, some of the insiders we trusted might be compromised. Creed's eyes were calm. Yes. Not all. But enough to be dangerous. We must isolate them without triggering panic. Short burst sentences. Observe. Trace. Divide. The city outside seemed oblivious. A late-night diner hummed softly. Neon lights flickered. A bus rumbled down an empty avenue. And yet, in hidden rooms and offices, alliances whispered, signaling one another, coordinating movements that could undermine everything Dalton had secured. Every alliance had a leader. Every leader had a flaw. Dalton activated the surveillance network. Encrypted feeds streamed live. Entry points to secure facilities. Unmarked vehicles near sensitive areas. Internal communications flagged for anomalies. Each data point became a puzzle piece. Each movement, a clue. The shadow alliances were beginning to reveal themselves, slowly, deliberately. Rowan pointed at the screen. Sir, one faction inside has been feeding misinformation externally. It's subtle. Hard to detect. But it's influencing public perception. Legislative reactions. Committee decisions. Creed nodded. The hum of servers. The soft click of a keyboard. A faint whir from a drone overhead. The human factor, ambition, secrecy, fear, had now merged with the storm's mechanical precision. And Dalton understood, the game was no longer simple containment. It was influence, anticipation, and careful orchestration. We don't confront shadows blindly. We illuminate them. We expose their connections. And we guide their mistakes. Rowan's brow furrowed. How do we control unseen collaborators, sir? Not control. Observation. Influence. Anticipation. We let them reveal themselves, and then, we act. A soft microtwist appeared on the screens. A vehicle moved against its expected path. A door opened where it shouldn't. Two internal agents exchanged signals flagged as suspicious. At first, it looked like error. Then the alignment of signals revealed deliberate coordination. They trust invisibility. We trust observation. The difference is clarity. Dalton exhaled. The shadow alliances had emerged. They were subtle. They were unpredictable. But they were no match for an awakened mind, deliberate in observation and guided by experience. The storm isn't just external. It isn't just internal. It's a network of human choices, converging in darkness. And light, deliberate, observant, awake, can trace every connection. Sir, what now? Dalton's gaze swept the city, the warehouse, the West Wing, the networks. Now, we wait. We watch. We let the shadows reveal themselves fully. And then, we decide who shapes the storm. And maybe, this is where power and awareness finally collide. Dalton Creed leaned back, eyes scanning a cascade of feeds from every corner of the city and the West Wing. The shadow alliances were converging. External and internal signals overlapped, creating interference. The web of data, once neatly parsed, began to twist, fold, and collapse. You felt it before. The sudden panic when the network you relied on becomes unstable. When chaos isn't just outside, it's in every signal, every pathway, every byte. Rowan spoke cautiously. Sir, the encrypted channels are failing. Multiple redundancies are offline. The data web is collapsing. If we don't stabilize it now, external actors will gain full control. Creed's jaw tightened. Then we rebuild it, differently. He activated manual overrides, directing streams to isolated secure nodes. Agents in the field received direct orders. Every move, every byte, every signal monitored in real time. There was one detail everyone missed: collapse reveals weaknesses. And weaknesses reveal truths. Outside, the city remained oblivious. Neon reflected on wet asphalt. A bus rolled quietly down the street. Inside, humans were dancing on digital fault lines, unaware their systems were already compromised. Dalton studied the cascading anomalies. Short sensory grounding. Servers hummed. A printer clicked sporadically. The faint vibration of a drone overhead. Every minor digital error amplified tension. Every unplanned interruption hinted at deeper exposure. Sir, one internal faction is attempting to override secure logs. If they succeed, they can mask the shadow alliances completely. Creed's eyes sharpened. Pattern break. At first, it seemed like a secondary problem. Then he realized, it was the real test. Not to contain chaos, but to expose loyalty, strategy, and foresight. Dalton moved with precision. Short burst sentences. Redirect. Isolate. Trace. Encrypted signals rerouted. Corrupt nodes isolated. All anomalies catalogued. Every agent monitored in real time. And then, the web began to fracture further. A cascade of errors revealed a previously hidden alliance inside the West Wing. One agent, trusted, now clearly aligned with external orchestrators. The collapse had exposed him. And with him, the deeper conspiracy. Dalton's voice was calm, almost whispering. Observation reveals truth. Truth reveals choices. And choices reveal the storm. The hum of servers rose, then dropped. A distant siren echoed. Lights flickered across screens. The internal and external systems were no longer just connected. They were intertwined. Every decision, every signal, every manipulation feeding into a growing digital labyrinth. Rowan's voice was tense. Sir, they're trying to isolate the files digitally. If they succeed, external parties will have complete access. Dalton exhaled slowly. At first, it seemed hopeless. Then clarity emerged. The human mind, deliberate, awake, and observant, could navigate even this collapse. The web collapses. The storm intensifies. But we see clearly. Dalton activated a final override, isolating sensitive channels and feeding misleading signals to the conspirators. Every movement anticipated. Every reaction guided. It wasn't about control. It wasn't about power. It was about foresight. About guiding chaos to reveal truth. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the intricate collapse and reconstruction of digital order happening above and around them. Dalton stepped back, fingers brushing the tablet. The web can collapse. But awareness cannot be destroyed. Philosophical reflection. Systems fail. Machines falter. But the deliberate human mind observes, adapts, and endures. Dalton Creed's gaze swept the screens one final time. The hidden alliances had been exposed. The orchestrator's system destabilized. And the human mind, alert, precise, awake, had turned the collapse into revelation. And maybe, this is where the storm becomes opportunity. The sun rose slowly over the city. A faint orange glow reflected off glass towers, painting long shadows across the streets. Traffic hummed. Pedestrians moved with purpose. Coffee shops opened. Life appeared normal. You felt it once, haven't you? The illusion of calm after a storm. The world oblivious to forces reshaping it behind the scenes. Dalton Creed remained in the secure operations room. Screens displayed a map of cascading consequences, political, digital, and human. The collapse of the data web had revealed hidden fractures. Internal allies had been exposed. External orchestrators had lost control. Rowan's voice broke the silence. Sir, the ripple effect is spreading. Committee votes are shifting. Officials are reconsidering positions. Public opinion is influenced, subtly, but decisively. The storm moves silently, and strikes quietly. Dalton scanned each feed. Microhooks blinked across the map, minor delays in legislation, unexplained changes in public messaging, subtle resignations, and internal questioning. The consequences of the previous night's operations were unfolding in real time. Sensory grounding. A printer whirred softly. Lights flickered in a distant corridor. The faint click of a lock echoed somewhere in the building. Every action has a reaction. Every choice echoes beyond the moment it is made. Rowan leaned closer. Sir, some internal personnel are panicking. They fear exposure. Their hesitation is disrupting normal operations. Creed's eyes narrowed. Pattern break. At first, this seemed like weakness. Then he realized, it was leverage. Short burst sentence. Fear reveals truth. Truth reveals opportunity. Outside, life continued seemingly untouched. Children played in parks. Streetlights reflected in puddles from the morning dew. Business meetings proceeded as scheduled. And yet, within hidden corridors, within whispered conversations, within digital channels, consequences unfolded, subtle, invisible, undeniable. The storm had moved from chaos to influence. From reaction to awareness. Dalton activated selective monitoring. Encrypted feeds displayed internal whispers and external messaging. Small fractures grew. Minor errors amplified. Subtle betrayals revealed themselves. Rowan asked quietly, Sir, are we manipulating them? Creed shook his head slowly. No. We are observing. Guiding reactions without force. Letting the storm reveal its own hidden consequences. Short sensory grounding. A door clicked shut. A keyboard tapped hesitantly. A distant hum of a printer. The files had never been the true danger. Grayson had never been the ultimate threat. The orchestrator's system had never been unassailable. The real power, the real consequence, came from human reaction, observation, and choice. Every hesitation, every fear, every misstep now mattered. And Dalton had learned to anticipate each one. He watched as one internal agent attempted a cover-up. Short burst sentence. Almost invisible. Almost unnoticed. Caught anyway. Another attempted a diversion, subtly shifting blame. Dalton already saw it. Already knew. Already documented. The storm may appear external. But the hidden consequences are internal, in thought, in action, in human choice. Dalton exhaled slowly. The ripple effects were now unstoppable. Every human choice, every reaction, every internal hesitation now part of a growing narrative. Chaos exposes. Uncertainty teaches. And awareness, deliberate, patient, awake, turns consequence into insight. Sir, what now? Dalton's eyes scanned the city, the West Wing, the networks, and the shadows where alliances had shifted. Now, we observe consequences. We record. We guide. We learn. And maybe, this is where the true impact of the storm becomes visible. The city lights shimmered on the river, restless. Dalton Creed stood in the secure operations room, hands clasped behind his back. The storm outside had passed. The shadow alliances had been exposed. The internal fault lines revealed. The data web collapsed and rebuilt itself. You felt it once, haven't you? The anticipation before a decisive move. The knowledge that all previous action leads to this moment. Rowan leaned in, whispering, "Sir, everything is in position. The files are secured. Internal threats isolated. External operatives unaware." Creed's jaw tightened. Then we strike. Strategically. Deliberately. Screens displayed the city, office buildings, streets, rooftops, unmarked vehicles. Every agent in the field poised, waiting. Every channel monitored. Every reaction anticipated. There was one detail no orchestrator had considered: foresight guided by awareness. Dalton's voice, calm but commanding, broke the silence. Activate coordinated observation. Feed controlled misinformation. Guide the human actors without them knowing. Expose the final alignments. Rowan's eyes widened. "Sir, the stakes are unprecedented. Then we act accordingly. Precision over panic. Insight over chaos." Outside, the city appeared normal. Commuters left offices. Neon signs buzzed softly. Street vendors set up for the evening. But beneath the surface, in hidden rooms, in silent whispers, and in encrypted channels, the final strategic play unfolded. Every move carefully calculated. Every reaction anticipated. Every alliance exposed to its own errors. Dalton studied Grayson's communications. The young operative had assumed superiority. Assumed chaos would prevail. Assumed Dalton would react impulsively. Assumptions are weaknesses. We exploit them. Rowan spoke softly, "Sir, he's moving toward the files." Creed's eyes narrowed. Pattern break. At first, it seemed like a confrontation. Then he realized, the files were never the point. The storm was a test of awareness, patience, and strategy. Dalton activated the countermeasures. Encrypted feeds redirected. Surveillance drones repositioned. Internal agents guided subtly, invisibly, toward optimal positions. Sensory grounding. Servers hummed. A door clicked softly. A drone whirred overhead. Every orchestrator, every shadow operative, every internal conspirator, they were now reacting to Dalton's observation, not the other way around. "Sir, he's realizing he's being monitored. He's adjusting his moves." Creed smiled faintly. Short burst sentences. Let him adjust. Let him believe he has control. The real control lies in observation. Dalton executed the final alignment. The files remained secured. Internal and external threats neutralized without exposure. Shadow alliances revealed fully. Public perception subtly influenced in their favor. Chaos can be orchestrated. Perception can be guided. But the deliberate human mind defines the outcome. Outside, the city remained unaware. Lights reflected on wet streets. A train rumbled softly in the distance. Life went on, oblivious to the storm that had been carefully controlled, anticipated, and resolved. Rowan asked, "Sir, it's done." Dalton exhaled slowly, letting the tension ebb. "For now. But storms are never truly finished. They evolve. And we must remain awake. And maybe, this is where the final play becomes the beginning of something larger. The city had settled into a fragile calm. Dalton Creed observed from the operations room. Screens displayed the ripple effects of the final strategic play. Internal factions were recalibrating. External operatives were confused, frustrated, contained. Public perception subtly shifted. You felt it before. The quiet after a storm when the world doesn't yet realize what has happened. Rowan whispered, "Sir, the consequences are spreading. Some officials are questioning past decisions. Some allies are re-evaluating loyalty. And some external operatives, they're disappearing into uncertainty." Creed's jaw tightened. This is the true aftermath. Not victory. But awakening. Dalton studied the digital map. Microhooks blinked across areas of influence. Legislative delays, internal hesitation, and strategic uncertainty all visible. Every reaction now mapped, every consequence noted. Short sensory grounding. Servers hummed softly. A faint metallic click echoed in the corridor. Lights flickered on distant streets. Every choice made in secrecy now echoed outward. Every hesitation, every miscalculation, every subtle alignment exposed consequences invisible to most. Rowan leaned in, concerned. "Sir, some internal personnel are still unsure. They fear exposure. They question loyalty. It's causing tension." Creed's eyes narrowed. Pattern break. At first, it seemed like instability. Then he realized, it was a test of character. Of patience. Of who could observe and endure without panic. Tension reveals truth. Truth reveals opportunity. Outside, life appeared normal. Coffee shops buzzed. Cars moved smoothly through intersections. Tourists snapped photos. The world was unaware of the invisible storm shaping every decision inside corridors of power. The storm had moved beyond chaos. It now existed in perception, anticipation, and subtle influence. Dalton reflected quietly. The orchestrator's plan had been neutralized. Shadow alliances exposed. Data web collapsed and rebuilt under controlled observation. Yet the human factor remained unpredictable. Every agent, every official, every operative could still make mistakes. And those mistakes could ripple indefinitely. The aftermath wasn't about control. It was about insight. Observation. Guiding consequences without revealing intervention. Rowan asked softly, "Sir, is it truly over?" Dalton exhaled slowly, calm, deliberate. No storm is ever truly over. The aftershocks continue. The world moves unaware. But we see everything. Victory isn't in dominance. It's in understanding. It's in observing human choice, and steering it quietly. Dalton turned from the screens, letting the aftershocks settle in his mind. Internal fractures healed or hardened. External operatives recalibrated. The files remained secure, yet their potential impact lingered. And maybe, this is where the consequences become the true lesson. Observation. Insight. Awakening. The storm has passed. But the world has changed quietly, irreversibly. The city breathed quietly in the early morning haze. Dalton Creed stood at the observation deck, looking out across the river. Lights shimmered on the water. Cars moved slowly, pedestrians hurried along sidewalks, unaware of the storm that had raged silently around them. You felt it before. That moment when awareness dawns, not loud, not violent, but undeniable. Rowan appeared beside him, voice soft. "Sir, everything is in order. Internal threats neutralized. External manipulators contained. The ripple effects are stabilizing." Dalton nodded, eyes never leaving the horizon. Order is fragile. Awareness is enduring. Across the city, life resumed. Children laughed in parks. Neon signs flickered on. Cafes opened, brimming with morning patrons. Yet beneath normalcy, subtle changes persisted. Decisions had shifted. Alliances subtly realigned. Perception quietly influenced. The world had changed, though no one outside the storm could see it. The orchestrators believed chaos would dictate outcomes. They underestimated human observation. They ignored insight. They dismissed patience. But the storm revealed something deeper, not just about systems, but about people. Rowan leaned closer. You mean, the awakening, sir? Exactly. The awakening isn't about control. It's about awareness. It's about understanding the storm, and yourself, before it strikes. Dalton reflected on the files, the shadow alliances, the data collapse, and the political ripple effects. Everything had been observed. Every choice noted. Every consequence anticipated. The storm outside tested us. The storm inside revealed us. And the storm within awakened us. Short sensory grounding. The wind rustled across the observation deck. A distant train hummed. Lights flickered across buildings, reflected in ripples of the river. The city continued, unaware of the invisible orchestration guiding its trajectory. There was one detail no one could ignore. Human consciousness, deliberate and awake, is the ultimate force against chaos. Rowan asked quietly, Sir, what now? Dalton's gaze remained on the horizon, calm, intense. Short burst sentences. We remain vigilant. We observe. We guide, not force. And when the next storm comes, we will be awake. The city stretched endlessly before them. Its chaos, calm, and complexity intertwined. Dalton understood the lesson: the greatest power lies not in control, but in awareness. Not in dominance, but in insight. Not in reaction, but in anticipation. Life would continue, storms would return, choices would be made. But those who observe, who awaken, who act with deliberate clarity, they shape the world quietly, irreversibly. Rowan sighed, a mix of relief and reverence. Dalton smiled faintly. And maybe, this is where everything begins again. Observation. Awareness. Insight. The awakening isn't a moment. It's a state of being. And now, we live it. The city moved on, oblivious to the silent orchestration that had changed it. Dalton Creed stepped back from the edge. Calm. Prepared. Awake. The storm has passed. But the mind, awakened, will never be the same.